Hey guys, it's Naya from EcoWell Co. I wanted to create a video today about connection. And of course, yes, I'm going to be talking about our connection between us and nature. But I first want to talk about momentarily our connection between us and other humans, ourselves. There's a few things real quick before I go into the content. There are a few things that I'm going to end up defining throughout this video. One is going to be what exactly climate is. So we'll get to that in a second. But I do want to start this video off by saying, I know right now we're in a really difficult, scary, confusing, relaxed, overwhelming time. And I want to remind all of us to, reach out to your loved ones, stay connected, reach out if you need to reach out. If you're feeling lonely or whatever it may be, or just when you think about someone, reach out to them. You know what I'm saying? Shoot them a text, shoot them an email, shoot them a message on social media, shoot them, give them a call. Right now, if there's ever been a time for us to make sure that we remain connected to the people that we truly care about, and extend a heartfelt connection to the whole world for healing, the time is now. And I hope that as we continue forward, we can make decisions to always to reach out when we have that inkling to reach out. Connection is really, really big. And of course, the main purpose of this video is to talk about connection between us and nature. But I just wanted to say that because, I don't know, it's just really important. And I know of myself, sometimes I can get caught up in life, and life is so busy and the days just seem to go and go and go and go and go. And then you have that fleeting thought about somebody, but you don't always follow through. And that's something that I've definitely experienced in my life, is like having fleeting thought, but don't follow through. So I just wanted to say that. So anyway, now back to scheduled content. So connection between us and nature. Yes, we're all connected. But one way that I wanted to explore connection that we have is through the understanding of stimuli and response to said stimuli, right? So us as humans, as you can attest for yourself, I'm sure you can give me a ton of examples, we respond to stimulus, right? And typically my understanding is that our response is going to be something that is going to optimize our well-being, that's going to make sure that we survive. It's going to be something that's reaching a goal that is generally in our favor, right? Or in the favor that is protecting the ones that we love, whatever it may be, right? So just overall, my understanding of typically how my responses are is I'm protecting myself in some capacity, reaching some sort of goal that's in my favor. Great. And of course, when I say in my favor being like whatever you define as important to you. Great. Cool. All right. So a couple examples of like stimulus and response, right? There could be a chemical reaction going on inside of me. So maybe that's more of a subconscious stimulus that says, hey, it's time to eat. I'm now hungry. Thus, my response is I'm going to find food. Same thing with thirst. Same thing with sleep. Or I wake up in the morning and the stimulus could be I got to get ready to go to work. So I'm like, all right, cool. So I put on clothes, I prepare my lunch, I get ready to go to work. Another stimulus could be, somebody's coming at you and they're upset, they're sad, they're aggressive, whatever it may be. Your response to that stimulus is something that you feel was fitting for the moment, right? That's going to protect your peace or get you to whatever goal that you're searching for in that moment, right? Even if it puts you off guard, you're going to have some sort of a response. I could dive deeply into the whys behind responses and the choices behind responses, but that's not the purpose of today's video, so we'll explore that at a later date. But I really want us to get up to, but overall the understanding here is that there's a stimulus and there's a response. So just as we do that, so does the natural environment. Sometimes, like if you're walking down the street, right, and you see a bird or a squirrel or whatever it may be, you're the stimulus, so you're walking and it notices you, and its typical response is to run away. You lift up a rock, what do the bugs do? You usually scurry away, right? So nature can have a slew of responses. And one thing that I want us to understand about us in a natural environment is that we are connected in the fact that we respond to stimuli. And when we think about the natural environment, when we think about climate, when we think about change in the natural environment around us, when we think about climate change, when we think about emissions and waste and everything else, like everything that we do, everything that we put out there is some sort of a stimulus that is going to elicit some sort of a response. And vice versa, everything that the natural environment presents to us, whether or not it's a beautiful day outside right now, so that's a stimulus for me to want to be outside to record a video because it just feels great. Or, it's downpouring and you're outside, your response is, I need to run to shelter so I'm not soaking wet anymore. Or a hurricane is coming, your response is, I need to get to a safe space. So there's a lot of different things that we would respond to, and there's a lot of different ways that in which the natural environment responds to us. So I said I was going to take a moment to define climate. Climate is the long-term usual weather patterns of the place, temperature, humidity, windiness, and vegetation. So all the 5 things I've just listed have an influence of climate, and thus climate thus also has an influence on those 5 characteristics there. So that means that if there is a change, say, in the amount and or type of vegetation in the area, that could be a stimulus to elicit a response in the general climate or the general makeup of animals in that area or humans being involved. So a good example of that would be, let's take the rainforest, for example. So the rainforest is its own microclimate that's actually quite large because it spans, it's literally like, if you think about the rainforest, if you envision a map, or like a global map, usually what you'll see is that the rainforest, it's like a band that just goes around the whole map. If you just follow it from like Brazil, from like you see like Peru, Ecuador, Brazil, you can keep going, Democratic Republic of the Congo, other countries in Africa, keep going. You have the Indonesia areas and other places in Asia that have similar temperate, they have the similar climate there. So there are different types of climate, and typically they tend to span in an interesting like horizontal way, which they're typically parallel in some fashion if you really think about it. The climate that I'm experiencing here and other folks experiencing similar climate on other parts of the world is going to be different than the folks that are experiencing climate in Florida or the Caribbean or like I said, the rainforest. But anyway, so getting back to vegetation in terms of how that influences climate. So the removal of vegetation can change the climate drastically. Mass removal of vegetation, like what is experienced in deforestation, specifically in the rainforest and other temperate forested areas, can have a massive impact on the climate. That's something that you may hear about if you have at all. But the mass deforestation of, for example, in Brazil and other parts of the world, in Brazil and Indonesia, in the Congo and other places that, you know, are logging it for whatever it may be, whether or not it be farming, palm oil, other resources, lodging, you know, whatever it may be. There's a ton of reasons why this bird is really loud. There's a ton of reasons why wood may be harvested, right? But that mass removal and lack of replacement has an immediate effect on the surrounding climate. In the rainforest, one of the major reasons why it rains there is because of the precipitation coming from the leaves of the trees and all the other plants existing there. And so essentially, if you take that away, you're eventually going to get an encroaching desert. And as many times, if you've heard anything about the rainforest, you've likely heard that it's called the lungs of the planet. And so if we're taking away all the benefits that trees offer us, all the stimuli and the response that they do that keep things in balance, keep things going, if they're gone, we're going to see a change in climate, which alternatively is going to be a stimulus that elicits a response from the vegetation on the ground. So it's going to be this constant cycle of the removal of trees is going to be a stimulus that impacts climate, that impacts weather, that impacts windiness, that impacts humidity in that region. And then you're going to see a change in those being a stimulus because that is changing, and thus changing the microclimate, the local climate in that area. That is then going to elicit a response on the ground, on the Earth's surface, that is then going to be this constant cycle of stimulus and response, stimulus and response, stimulus and response. And the interesting part about this is like humans play a role here. Even if we're not directly there or if we're not paying attention, we are facing and experiencing the change in that micro or regional climate on a more macro or microclimatic way, right? So if you think of the Earth having a ton of microclimates that have, you know, their general usual type of, you know, weather events, temperature, whatever they experience in that region, a ton of microclimates create macroclimates. And changes, like I said, in the vegetation, in the windiness in the wind patterns, in humidity, in overall temperature, in whatever it may be in those regions are going to impact and elicit a response that is then going to be this constant cycle of stimulus and response, stimulus and response. So the way that I see climate change is a response to stimulus. Only thing I really talked about right now was deforestation. But in truth, there's a lot more that goes into it, right? So climate naturally changes over time anyway. So if humans weren't here, climate would change regardless. It may take a bit longer than the past 100 years. I mean, the science is showing that climate has changed drastically in the past 100 years, when typically we're understanding climate to usually change over the span of hundreds, thousands, and or hundreds of thousands of years, versus the 1920s to the 2020s. So it's been roaring for the past 100 years that we're experiencing some change. And there's nothing to downcredit about the experience of human evolution, the experience of industrial revolution, the experience of technology and information age. I mean, this has been amazing, and we can revel in the beauty that is human intellect and human camaraderie. However, at the same time, there are negatives that we are really beginning to feel the brunt of, and will continue to feel the brunt of as we continue to make decisions that are not in favor of living in harmony with the natural environment. So living in harmony with the natural environment means 9 times out of 10, we're likely going to have to change the lifestyles that we live, change the way that we purchase things, the way that we produce things, the way that we get around, the way that we live. I mean, just all this, the way that we eat, where we get our food from, where we don't get our food from, you know what I'm saying? Like where we get our clothes from, how we manufacture our clothes, how we connect with people. There's so many different ways in which like our daily lives, even if we're not paying attention, is deeply involved in serving as some sort of a stimulus that is going to elicit a response. And as climate and the natural environment continues to respond to the stimulus that we are putting out there, we are then going to respond to the stimulus that the natural environment is going to put on us. So if climate change is going to result in drier, for example, if one area that's used to getting a significant amount of rain over time is experiencing less rain, and less rain is becoming more dry, more desert-like, that is a change that is going to harm the people in that area. So if you're a farmer that's living in an area that used to have bounty of water, but now it's dry, you're now responding to the stimulus. Your crop is responding to that stimulus by not growing. Amazing. As a side note, every time I try to come out to record a video, somebody wants to do something in their yard. Yay, quarantine, so that people can stay home and stay safe, but also everybody's home, so everybody wants to do something in their yard. But whatever, that's besides me. But the moral of the story here is, if we can take the opportunity to understand how just as we respond to stimulus, the natural environment is a living, breathing organism as we are, that is also going to respond to stimulus. And as it responds to stimulus to reach, as I defined before, some sort of a goal, to survive, to reach some sort of a balance again, to be sustainable in some capacity, as the environment is trying to reach that goal, it is going to affect us in some capacity. And that is the brunt of climate change. The effect, many scientists are studying exactly what those effects are going to be, but many times we're not sure exactly how severe or how frequent or how intense or how long it's going to last. We don't know. And I think that's the importance of why it's important to be prepared as much as we possibly can, and not just physically prepared or monetarily prepared, but also mentally prepared in our hearts and our spirits to shift, to adapt and move into different job roles if we need to adapt and move to different places if we need to adapt and welcome climate refugees if we need to adapt and lead with a loving heart, and to even start now to learn how to do that, especially since we got all this time to be trapped in the house. To do some deep diving and to do some reflection and deep introspection to learn about ourselves. But I say all this today just to really get us to encourage you to explore what it means for you to connect with nature in a way of understanding it as what is going on around us in the natural environment, the intensities that we may be experiencing, especially folks in the Caribbean areas. Hurricane season is a thing. But over time, the hurricanes are becoming more frequent and more intense. Tornado season is a thing in different parts of the world, but over time they have become more frequent and more intense. Thunderstorms are a thing, but over time they're becoming more frequent and more intense. Wildfires are a thing, but over time they're becoming more frequent and more intense. You see what I'm saying? There's a pattern here. And farmers who are in different parts of the world who are used to certain conditions are experiencing difference in conditions, thus differences in what can grow and what can't grow, which means they eventually have to change what they can grow and what they can't grow, which means that's differences in what they can sell and their overall economic standing. So you see what I'm saying? It's all connected. Even when it comes to what's in our atmosphere pollution, physical waste pollution, everything that we're experiencing is going to be some sort of it's going to elicit a response because of some sort of a stimulus. So to break it all, to reel it all in, because I'm sure I may have gone all over the place for you guys, but I hope that this, momentary, breakdown of stimulus and response and trying to understand our connection, how we experience stimulus and how we respond to stimulus, and then how we can connect to nature and understanding that. If we can see that what nature is going through is simply a response to the stimulus that not only it is experiencing as a result of itself, as a result of what's going on in space, but also as a result of what we're doing and how we're living our life and the pollutions that we're emitting into our natural environment, the waste that we're letting out, just the way that we're living our lives, whether or not it's an individual person, a community, a group, or just an individual organization, corporation, industrial production plant. There's everything that goes into it. So it's not just one person, and it's not just a small set of people or a small set of industry. It's everyone is involved. Everyone is involved in producing some sort of stimulus that is eliciting a response, that in which the response is hoping to reach some sort of balance, some sort of solution, some sort of way in which it can survive and sustain. So anyway, that's all I really gotta say. I'm really excited, but there's a few things that I mentioned in today's video that I'm going to continue to dig pretty deep into, but as I'm continuing to, create, more content and get the website pumping for EcoWell Co, I thought it would be really, really important to just talk about connection, and not just connection with ourselves or connection with other people, but our connection with the natural environment, because that's what EcoWell Co is all about. I'm all about exploring our connection and trying to figure out how we can expand our understanding and our awareness of the natural environment and the role in which we play in its balance, its health, its wellness, and the role that the natural environment plays in our balance, our health, and our wellness, because we do depend on the boundless fruits in which the natural environment provides for us, and we do offer the natural environment something as well. And if we can just learn to live a little bit more harmoniously with it, and to change our lifestyles in a way that allows us to survive and allows our future generations to survive on this very planet, and begin to really understand these things in new and interesting and creative ways, I feel like we can actually make some true progress. But nonetheless, do stick with me, and if you have any additional questions about anything that I talked about in this video, do shoot me a message. I'll link everything below. But I just wanted to get this out there because it needs to be talked about, okay? It needs to be talked about. But anyway, stay safe, everyone. Please, please, please. And do remember to stay connected. Ask yourself all the difficult questions that you've always never thought to ask yourself, because you got time now. Reach out, stay connected with loved ones. If you do need any help during this time, there are all types of platforms that allow you to connect with mental health professionals remotely, so be sure to check those out. A quick Google search can give you lots of answers, and be sure to call your loved ones when you're thinking of them. I'm sure they would love to hear I love you, and be sure to tell yourself that you love you as well. I love you too. I may not know you, but I love you, man. I got tons of love to share, and nature loves you as well, so don't forget that either. Even if it's came and wreaked havoc on you, it still loves you. And just remember that it's responding in a way that's trying to maximize its ability to survive, to see another day, another century, another millennium. But anyway, thank you so much, and God bless everyone.